Hello, everyone. We're back. It is Thursday, July 30th, and the world is on fire. I did a video yesterday about how the world is on fire and how that is manifesting itself in the news and people's perceptions, and how really that never ends. Well, it does end. The world being on fire ends when everything that can burn has burned. So I guess that's something to look forward to. That means every forest, every grassland, every field of crops, every town, every city, every human, every animal, everything that can burn has burned. Well, then the fires stop. And what does the planet look like at that point? Well, I guess a barren wasteland. Mordor, right? It looks like Mordor. You remember those movies, The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, and all the portrayals of Mordor. You know, a blasted landscape, smoke billowing out of the ground, nothing green, nothing alive, no color, all just flat grays and blacks. And when everything has burned, well, it'll be a world of ashes, right? And you may say, oh, that's hyperbole, that's overstating it, that's whatever. Okay, that's what happens when you can't put fires out. When you don't have the means to put fires out, and there's just so many of them, and you don't know even where to start. When everything's on fire, and all the fires are huge, and they're all 100% out of control, and they're all burning in all directions, and everywhere they're burning towards is Bordeaux or London or Madrid, and you're just doing the best you can, and everything's burning, and some things you just can't touch because they're just so far away, or they're so remote. Or they're not burning Madrid, right? You don't fight fires maybe that aren't actually setting fire to London and Madrid. So we're going to have to do some triage, some very painful choices, and things are going to be left to burn. And it may be that in the end, everything burns, just because there's not enough of us to put the fires out. So that was my last video. There's a lot more to it than what I just explained. If that sounds like a science fiction-y type of statement about the problem, well, then go watch my other video from last time, and I think you'll discover that it's not science fiction. There's very real physics behind this about how the world burns completely down. I also did a video July 13th. I think I just looked it up because otherwise I wouldn't know, where I said something to the extent civilization has 5 years left. And that's, I would stick to that. It might even be as little as 3, but certainly no more than 5. And what comes after that? Well, I don't know. Who knows? Mordor? Maybe Mordor, right? Maybe we get Mordor. Everything burns, and there's nobody left to put everything back together again, and there's no way to do it. And Mordor. 3 to 5 years. No more than 5. I don't see how this continues for another 5 years without it being a complete dumpster fire. Just Mordor. Okay. What I want to talk about today is hope. What I want to talk today is hope, and you're going to be hearing a lot of it. You're going to be hearing a lot of this from talking heads on TV, from climate activists, scientists even, politicians, but also just common people who are now fed up with climate change and no action on climate change, and now we're going to do something, okay? Hope. They're going to talk about hope. There's no hope. Allow me to elaborate. So back in 2015, the nations of the world, I think there was one exception, signed the Paris Climate Accords. And the Paris Climate Accords had a bunch of goals and a bunch of things to do, but they were all voluntary. In fact, even what nations could do or would aspire to do was voluntary. So you didn't have to do anything, and you didn't even have to present something for your nation to aspire to. But if you did, it was just whatever you thought of. So if you're a manufacturing nation and manufacturing is real important to you, then you wouldn't compel yourself to alter manufacturing, but you might say, well, our country will focus on restoring wetlands, right? Rebuilding forests. So our country, we're manufacturing, we can't do anything about that, but we will try to do something else for the environment, to trap carbon in trees or whatever. nobody really did anything. I'm sure every nation in the world will point to something that they say they did or aspired to do or tried to do. Joe Biden passed this thing he called the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. It contained a few climate measures, mostly directed at, what would you call it, green consumerism. So not like thou shalt not. There was nothing like don't do this. It was all like, well, if you're going to do this, do it another way, and we'll give you incentives to do it differently. You're still going to buy a car, but we're going to give you an incentive to buy an electric car. You're still going to manufacture a car, but we're going to give you incentives as a manufacturer to focus more on electric cars or some other alternative. Okay, and then when he issued this, well, of course, it's a spending bill, right? It's all these programs, all this money is going to go all these different directions. When he issued his spending bill and his goals, he didn't even call it climate action. He called it the Inflation Reduction Act, because in America, just so you all understand, in America, there is no climate crisis anywhere in the world. Even if you're having a climate crisis in France or Greece or Spain or Canada, no, you're not. And Donald Trump will just come out and tell you, you're just not managing things correctly. It's not a climate crisis, it's a management crisis. You're just a dummy, and your forests are on fire, your suburbs are on fire, whatever else is going on, and it's just mismanagement. And if you were a brilliant manager like Donald Trump and his cabinet, then you wouldn't be having these problems. Although here in America, Oregon and Washington are on fire, Nebraska burned, Colorado's on fire. It's really been pretty horrific, and a lot of smoke was generated. But as soon as Canada was on fire and generating smoke, then Donald Trump wanted to punish them. So that's the level of things in the U.S. Do not look to the U.S. for any guidance, example, clarity, nothing. That will never come out of this country where I live. The United States of America will never, ever acknowledge that there's any kind of a problem. This is a situation where we could be neck deep in quicksand and we would still claim, oh, yeah, I got a handle on this. But in fairness, even though the U.S. will just be in flat out denial, and we'll probably throw in prison people who try to say, you're in denial, okay? Just throw you in prison, just black bag you and take you to a rendition site, and you're gone. You end up in El Salvador. It doesn't matter. No one else is doing any better, is my point. Now, you can watch the BBC or French or DW, right? Deutsche Welle, I think that's what it is. And the French news, and they'll tell you, oh, yeah, we're on fire, it's real, it's global heating, climate change, now we understand, we didn't know it was going to happen, but now it's happening, it's clearly happening, and they'll do all these kinds of things, and you'll think, oh, well, they're ready to go, right? They're not in denial, they're not blaming the Canadians for all the smoke, and threatening to tariff them. No, they're ready to go. They're not pointing fingers. It's the immigrants. It's the something else. I mean, I'm sure somebody is. Nigel Farage is pointing fingers because that's all he's capable of doing. But other people are saying, "Oh yeah, this is it. They warned us. Scientists warned us." I've even heard them say that. They've even given science credit for, "Well, science raised the alarm. Science warned us. We did sign the Paris Climate Accords. After all, we did do that." So we were thinking at one time there was a problem. Back in 2015, we kind of knew there was a problem. We did sign the Paris Climate Accords, and so we knew, and now it's here. And that's the verbiage you're getting from the Western world, apart from the U.S. But the way they package this is in this euphemism of, well, we need climate action, and everybody does that. It's now code. This is the code you speak. This is the coded language we use, that we need climate action, or we need to further develop net zero. Okay? And we need more alternatives. But mostly we need climate action. Even net zero is a type of climate action. And even decarbonizing is climate action. And alternative energy is climate action. So it's all climate action. But all these things are vague. And none of them tell you what to do. And let me give you an example to really bring this home and give you an example of what a bad, sorry state we're in. Let's say you have a friend who's 52 years old, twice divorced, kids hate him. Now he's unemployed. He's drunk all the time. He smokes 4 packs of cigarettes a day, and he's obese and he's pre-diabetic. And you're worried about your friend. And you go to your friend and you say, "Well, you're in pretty bad shape." He says, "Yeah, I agree. I know that." Okay, well, that's a good sign, right? Your friend is saying, your friend's not arguing with you, like maybe he did in prior years. Like before, when he was 45 or 42 or 40, he would say, no, I got a handle on this. Okay, I know what's going on. I can stop anytime I want to. That's what you were going to hear. I can stop anytime I want to. And now he's 52, and he didn't. Okay, it was 10 years later, he's 52, and he didn't. So you approach your friend, and he says, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I got my life is a mess. And it could be really bad if I don't change." And you're thinking, wonderful. Now we can have the discussion. Now we can have the adult discussion. Concrete actions. And he says, "Yeah, I'm going to straighten my life out." That's what he says. "I'm going to straighten my life out." And you're like, right. And I'm right here for you, buddy. And we're going to have this conversation. And then you say something like, so you're going to stop drinking, right? Well, I know programs. And he's going to like, hold on. What do you mean? I mean, drinking is part of your problem, right? He's going to say, "No, drinking's not my problem. I mean, I want to straighten out my life. I know I need to do that, but I can't stop drinking because that's not the problem." And then you're thinking, okay, that's not a good sign. I mean, he's drunk right now, and he doesn't look good. He's not eating properly. His teeth are falling out. This is bad. And you're like, okay, something simpler. We'll come back to that later. Okay, how about the smoking? 4 packs of cigarettes a day. All right, you're spending all your disability check on cigarettes and alcohol. So let's just stop with the cigarettes, right? I know it's going to be difficult, but there's gum and there's pills and there's support networks and hypnosis. And he's like, what do you mean? You're going to stop smoking, right? Well, I can't. What do you mean? That's not my problem in my life. And now you see where this is headed, right? This is going to be the tragedy, right? And it's not, and it'll turn out to be, it's not the weight, it's not the drinking, it's not the loneliness, it's not, he's not talking to his kids, it's not, he can't have a relationship, it's not any of those things. He's just going to straighten out his life. And when you get down to wanting to do something about his life, like stop drinking, that's not the thing. And in the end, it's just this just aspirational goal. I'm going to straighten out my life, but I'm not going to do anything differently. And then you walk away, and you're really disappointed, and you're really afraid for him, because he doesn't get it, and obviously he's not strong enough. But also he just probably doesn't get it. He just, the way you were talking to your friend, and he was like, "No, alcohol is not the problem. What are you talking about? I enjoy the alcohol. I just need to straighten out my life. That's all." And in the end, he doesn't see any problems in his life, and there's no action he's willing to take. It's just this euphemistic, "I'm going to straighten out my life." You see where I'm headed with this? You see the painful point we're headed for here, right? In 2015, 10 years ago, we said, we're going to straighten out our life. And since then, all we've had is this euphemism. We're going to do things differently. We're going to straighten out our life. But when we looked at the fossil fuel consumption, no, that's not really the problem with my life right now. And when we looked at the manufacturing and the carbon output from industry, it was like, well, I don't know why you're pointing at that. That's not the problem I have. I just need to clean up my life. I just need to take climate action. And when it came down to all things you should do, right, these would be things in the physical world with fossil fuels and manufacturing and energy distribution and energy generation and how people get themselves around and how the economy is configured and what we value, money over whatever, community. Okay, all of our values. And every time you point to something, since, well, you did sign the Paris Climate Accords. I mean, you did admit that there's a problem. And you are saying, well, we need to clean up our act. But when we get right down to it, all the things that would be cleaning up your act are things you can't do. And it's like your friend whose life has completely fallen apart and who's doomed and may not even survive another few years at this rate. He's already got one foot homeless and living under a bridge, and then you'll have alcohol and tobacco, and that's all you'll have in his life. And you're worried about your friend. And at some point, you're just going to have to walk away from that friend. You're just going to have to not be a friend anymore at some point, because it's too painful for you. Because your friend is aware there's a problem, but your friend is not aware of what that problem is and where it comes from. And when you look at all the things he could do with his life, the alcoholism, the tobacco addiction, the other addictive behaviors, the inability to have relationships with people, the inability to be in the real world, the inability to seek help. When you look at your friend and you're trying to decide what are you going to solve first, you realize you can't solve anything because he doesn't recognize those things as problems. He just has this goal of cleaning up his life. And we had a goal in 2015 of doing something about climate change. Euphemism, hand wave, right? Well, when it came right down to, okay, so what are you going to do? Well, we're going to improve the situation. Okay, that's equally vague. So how do you improve the situation? By taking important and significant actions to do things differently. I see where this is headed. Can you name one? Well, yes, we have to be carbon neutral, and net negative, and net, all these other kinds of things. They're like, yeah, but what are you going to do? Well, we're going to pursue carbon neutrality solutions. Can you name one? Well, we'll have to innovate, and we need to fund these innovation projects, and we need to get our best people working on this and thinking through, and grants and science, and the science isn't finished. Really, we have to more science, more data, and you're like, okay, well that sounds like business as usual to me. You're just going to collect more data, and you're going to throw money at collecting more data. Well, what are you going to do with the data? Well, we can't do anything because the science is out, and of course the science is always out. That's the implication of that. That's how they get around that one. And so there's never any mention of something concrete. Now, the way they mention all their euphemisms, all the things they're going to do, like net neutrality and carbon neutral and alternative energy, these are terms that are derived by attorneys, lawyers. They are not contracts. They are not even the basis of regulations. They don't point at industries. They don't point at behaviors. They don't point at the things that people do every day in their life. Nothing they say. And you think it is, and you think it's all great, and it's the good kind of talk, so something good is going to come out of this, and nothing ever comes out of this because it was intended from the beginning not to be actionable. And they won't even make noise like, well, we obviously need new regulations. Oh, what are you regulating? Well, carbon consumption. We have to regulate carbon emissions. Okay, that would be interesting. Carbon. Now we're talking physics. You're going to regulate carbon emissions. Okay, well, which industries? Well, the airline industry. Okay, but the airline industry has to burn jet fuel. You can't have electric airplanes, not on a large scale. So are you going to shut down the airline industry? Yeah, we should shut it down. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. We can't have an airline industry. We can't have manufacturing in China shipped all over the planet on cargo ships into ports. We have to have either manufacturing locally or we don't have manufacturing. See, that's a concrete thing. But if you were to even think about that, even anticipate that, and even sit down for a moment, just sit with that. So we can't have manufacturing in China and have it shipped all over the planet on cargo ships into huge port facilities and then onto trucks and trains and transported all over the country into warehouses, and from warehouses transported on trucks and trains into retail outlet stores and big box shops and all that kind of stuff. And then people drive there, and there's a huge parking lot. Everybody drives there in their personal car, and they buy the 2 or 3 things they need that day or that week or that month, and then they drive home in their car, and then they live in their personal house, where they're not responsible for anything. No one ever comes in and says, hey, you're using too much energy, you're using too much water. No one's going to ever do that. So that doesn't happen. And so what part of that are you going to break? No part of that. But we'll talk about taking climate action. And this euphemism that I'm going to clean up my life. Well, when it comes down to, well, what are you going to do that? There's nothing we can do. We're just going to clean up our life. Because we can't survive without this life. And your friend, who will never give up alcohol and tobacco, can't live without those things. Or at least, at the very least, he can't imagine living without those things. Now, it could be simply a lack of imagination. That could be true. Your 52-year-old friend who is twice divorced, kids won't talk to him, alcoholic, smokes 4 packs of cigarettes a day, always has a cut over his eye because he's always brawling with people in arguments, and he's obese, he's probably pre-diabetic, and he's going to have liver failure and kidney failure. He has no money, no one cares about him. He's probably going to die under a bridge and be extracted as a corpse. Okay, and so that's where we're at right now, because we agree that our life has a problem, and we're going to clean that up, whatever that means. Clean it up someday. And the reason why we're having this discussion right now about, well, it's time to get busy with climate action, okay? The reason we're having this discussion right now is because the entire world is on fire. We signed the Paris Climate Accords 11 years ago, 2015. And we could have been talking about, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this, okay? But we didn't, because we signed the document. And that solves it, right? Well, we did sign the Paris Climate Accords. Did our nation ratify? We did. We did sign it. Okay, so job done, right? And back in your car driving to Starbucks for a latte. Because that's the answer. The answer is you signed the document. Phew, well, that was a lot of work, but we did it. And now, on my app, finding the nearest Starbucks. Oh, it's 8 miles away. That doesn't matter. I've got a car. You drive 8 miles to Starbucks or whatever, and you get your latte. And that's the answer. And you're going to be hearing a lot of this now. And you're going to see people on the news or in panels or politicians, demagogues, right? They're going to be banging on the podium. We need climate action. And you're going to be like, yes, of course, climate action. Finally, 11 years ago, we signed the Paris Climate Accords. Now we're having climate action. Great. And clap, 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 clap. Rah, rah, climate action. Nothing will happen, because nothing can happen from that aspirational goal, because that goal requires nothing. It just requires nothing. It names nothing. It points at nothing. It points at nobody. It points at no industry, no behavior, no energy solution, no way that we live. It doesn't point at anything, because it can't. Because as soon as you do, those people who you're pointing to and saying, you drive too much, you manufacture in a dirty way, your products aren't really necessary, and this has to change, and that has to go away, and this has to be regulated, and this has to be decarbonized. As soon as you start doing that, people are going to cut your head off if you're a politician. Or even if you're an activist. They're going to say, wait, you can't, pointing at me? Well, wait. I wasn't mentioned in the Paris Climate Accords. Of course you weren't. Nobody was mentioned in the Paris Climate Accords. There was no finger pointing going on in the Paris Climate Accords. It was just like, well, our life is sick. We're obese, we're alcoholic, we're addicted to tobacco and probably something else, and we're suffering from kidney failure and liver failure, and we probably got 3 years to live the way we're going. And that's what the Paris Climate Accords did. The Paris Climate Accords didn't say, we're going to get off alcohol, and this is how we're going to get off alcohol, and this is the day I'm going to start, and this is my goal, and this is how I'm going to meet my goals, and this is how I'm going to recognize failure. And when I fail, this is what I'm going to do as a backup strategy. Okay, that's not in the Paris Climate Accords, and that's not in your friend's plan to clean up his life and get himself off alcohol. In fact, your friend, when you bring up alcohol as something he maybe needs to fix, he's going to say, no, that's not my problem. I know my life is a mess, but that's not the reason my life is a mess. And we're that way right now with fossil fuels. Yeah, we know our life is a mess. We can see the world is on fire. And then there's going to be this El Nino thing that's going to come along and probably, put the last nail in our coffin. And we understand that these things are happening. And we understand on some level that it can only get worse. We understand on another level that it can never get better and it can never end. And there's a part of us that are thinking, so the world's on fire. We can't even put the fires out. We can't even manage them. The fires have to put themselves out, and that'll be a good thing. But that means we no longer have control, if we ever did. Maybe even control was a myth. And so now the fires are burning everywhere all the time, day and night. They start when they want to. They end when they can. And we don't know what to do about that. And so now people are afraid. So what? Yeah, you're afraid. So what? The people were afraid enough in 2015 to sign the Paris Climate Accords. Well, we see where that took us. It took us exactly nowhere. So now we're even more afraid? Or we're afraid differently? Or we're afraid of something that's a little more concrete than just, well, things could get bad someday, and things are bad right now, and we're looking at right now, and Madrid, the suburbs of Madrid are on fire, and the suburbs of London are on fire, and, half of England is is basically has massive fires in it. And, France and Spain are both burning, and Bordeaux, that Bordeaux, could burn. And so now we're afraid. Maybe we're afraid differently than we were in 2015. Maybe the fear was more intellectual, like we're screwing up. Science says we're screwing up. So let's just admit that science is probably right and we need to do something. But that's all this very intellectual thing. And our approach to it back in 2015 was very intellectual. Well, we aspire to this and we aspire to that, and we should have goals. But even having goals is voluntary. You don't have to have goals, but you should. And if you have goals, you should tell us what they are. That's a nice touch. Tell people what your goals are. And we're not going to hold you accountable to those goals. And no one inside your country will hold you accountable, probably. And different political leaders will come and go over the years and over the decades. And the goals will change and the goals will be dropped and the goals will come back. But they're just goals. It's just statements of, well, we should, we ought, we might, we could, but we won't. And we didn't. Did we? And here we are. And the world is on fire. Now, I'll be honest here. I have to be honest. I'm trying to be intellectual about this, okay? Let's have honest intellectual discussion. Had the world taken seriously the recommendations of the Paris Climate Accords and done all the things, crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and made good on their commitments, and actually tried to do something in the physical world with carbon fuel consumption like crude oil or coal, and it wouldn't have made a difference at this point. The Paris Climate Accords, the agreements, that the steps that they agreed to were really, they were as weak as they were. Because, well, for one thing, nobody would sign on to something that has teeth in it. Okay, that's just politics. That's just sovereign politics, national politics, geopolitics. Also, they thought they had forever. Scientists have been doing a grave and turns out to be lethal disservice to humanity. They've been telling people, politicians and the lay public as well. And remember, politicians are just people. Politicians don't go to 8 years of school to learn politics. Most of them are just elected from the general populace, and even if they do have PhDs or MDs or whatever, it's just general knowledge, right? They're business managers quite often. They have an MBA, that kind of thing. Or they're economists, or they're they're wealthy business people, right? Real estate brokers and all this kind of stuff. So, politicians are just drawn from the general public. They often have a lot more money. They have a lot more ideology, and they care more seriously about their ideology. They're much better talkers and much better liars, and they get elected because of those traits. They're rich. They care mostly about themselves. They lie, and they lie well, and they get to be in politics. And everyone knows this, and everyone laughs about it. Okay, those people were in no position. Those people had not the first fucking clue of what they had to do under the Paris Climate Accords. Not one stub, vestigial organ of a clue. Nothing. You might as well have gone to the zoo, pulled the chimps out of the zoo, and read the Paris Climate Accords to the chimps, and then asked them what they want to do. And what are they going to do? Where's my banana? You promised to be a banana. If I sat out here and listened to you, you said there'd be a banana. So why now I want my banana? That'd be the relationship between the chimps from the zoo and the Paris Climate Accords. Where's my banana? And that's the way it is now. Because the people who are in a position to sign these documents, decide what these documents say, take these documents back to their people, implement something in the documents, take it seriously, those people are chimps. And they want the banana. And as long as there's a banana, they'll talk to you. And when they're done talking to you, they want the banana. And that's how this works. And you think it works another way, and it doesn't. You think science has something to say about this, but it doesn't. You think academia has something to say about this, and it doesn't. The banana has a lot to say about this. And it's all about the banana. And now people are afraid. Well, now what happens? Oh, do we get another Paris Climate Accords? Oh, that would be fancy, wouldn't it? Oh, that would be cute. Let's have Paris Climate Accords 2.0. That would be cute. That would be comedy. That would be funny. Paris Climate Accords 2.0. Oh, let's just definitely do that. Let's waste another 11 years on voluntary measures that basically come down to, yeah, my life is a mess, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Because that sounds painful, right? Just give me the banana. Everything has to be about how I just get the next banana. So we could do that. We could do Paris Climate Accords 2.0. We could do it again. We could bang that gavel and we could get everybody in order and we could yell at them for being a bunch of pussies. You didn't do anything the first time we came here in 2015. You haven't done anything since. You're just a bunch of losers, and we could give them hell. And of course, it's not even the same people because it's been 11 years, right? All those people that signed that agreement back 11 years ago, they're not even signing anything now. They're retired. They've got their champagne and their yacht and their second home in Tahoe, and they're living their life and they don't even care. They're not even invited to Paris 2.0. They don't even care. And so the people who come to the next Paris Climate Accords and they debate and they argue and they threaten and they do all these things, and meanwhile, while they're inside, doing all the threatening, and they're looking out the window and they're seeing all the smoke. So they have maybe a little more for Paris 2.0. Maybe they have a little more incentive, but in the end, they're still gonna want to know. So where's my banana? I mean, I came here to talk. But what I'm really talking about is, where's my economic growth? Where's my hegemony? Where's my empire? How do I get rich on this? How do my industries get rich on this? Is there something that my industries can manufacture and all you can buy from us that solves your problem? Because I don't have any problems, but I'll sell you stuff out of my industries, thereby increasing my GDP and increasing my jobs. And that's the banana, right? That's the banana. And everybody who's signing on to this is thinking, when these chumps decide to start solving their climate problems, then they're going to come to me and they're going to want nuclear reactors and electric vehicles and electric trains and batteries and rare earths and import energy from my energy rich country, and they're going to want carbon removal technology, and they're going to want air filters, and they're going to want all these things, more insulation. I can sell them energy efficient appliances. Banana, banana, banana. I got all the bananas. So they're signing on the document and they're thinking, yep, it's going to be all bananas for me. I'm the big chimp. I got all the things they're going to have to buy and all this. And everyone's thinking the same thing. No one is sitting back at Paris 2.0 looking out the window at Bordeaux burning and thinking to themselves, we're not going to buy our way out of this. Nope. We're not going to economically grow our way out of this, are we? Look at that smoke. That's Bordeaux going up in flames. Look at that smoke. That's Madrid. That's Madrid burning. Madrid's on fire. Look at that. That's central London. Central London is on fire. I'm looking out the window. And these guys are talking about manufacturing our way out of climate change. And I'm looking out the window and I see central London on fire. I'm like, guys, maybe we're taking the wrong approach. Maybe we shouldn't be talking about taking climate action or taking some kind of action that floats all the boats and brings up the economy and creates new jobs and economic growth and reduced inflation and all the other things. Maybe we should just, could you guys come over here and look out the window and see what I'm seeing? I'm seeing fire. You know, I just have this impression. I got this impression flying into Paris on the plane. I just got this impression that, you know what it feels like to me, guys? While we're talking about economic growth and jobs and green economies and green energy and carbon neutrality and net zero, you know what? As I flew into Paris, my thought was the whole fucking planet's on fire. Now that's the conversation we need to have. People need to go into that room for Paris 2.0, and they need to sit down, and each of them needs to make a short speech. And the short speech is this: we've talked about taking climate action since the mid-90s, and you can see what it got us. I just flew in here from London. I just flew in here from Switzerland. I just flew in here from Beijing. And everywhere I looked out the window of the plane, the entire planet is on fucking fire. The planet's on fire. And we're here to do Paris 2.0. And we're going to sign off on some shit. And what I want to see is what we're going to do without. I don't want to hear about we're all going to take climate action independently, and it has to be voluntary, and we have to come up with our own measures, and we're going to preserve our industries, and we're going to preserve our GDP, and we're going to grow our way out of this with more jobs and more manufacturing and more exporting, okay? More consumerism. I don't want to hear that today, because I just flew in here from Beijing, and the entire fucking planet's on fucking fire. I fuck you not. And I'm not leaving here. I'm not leaving Paris 2.0. I'm going to sign a Paris Climate Accord, and it's going to have teeth. And it's going to require you and me and those guys over there and everybody who didn't come here to do something. Do something. Like your fat friend who says his life is a mess, but he won't give up the alcohol, and he won't give up the tobacco, and he won't give up the fast foods, and he won't give up everything else. He just his life is a mess, and he has these aspirational goals to clean up his life, and 2 years later he's dead under a bridge. Okay? And that's us if we don't take this seriously. Because I just flew in here from Toronto, and the entire fucking planet is on fucking fire. And maybe 11 years ago, we didn't have that motivation at Paris 1.0, 2015. But today, we might. Now, will they do that? I just engaged in some narrative warfare. Will those people coming together for Paris 2.0, will they do that? No. No, they won't. I guarantee you they won't. That's what we need to do. And I can say, well, this is what we need to do. Not to talk about, not to have aspirational goals. This is what we need to do. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. And the guy who just flew into Paris to attend the Paris Climate Accords for the second time, okay, different person than attended the first time. For the second time, new people, new blood, new ideas, hopefully new ideas. Have some ideas. That would be nice. We didn't have those last time, but this time we need to have ideas. And that person flew in, and that person is a different person, and they see that the whole world is on fire. Their world has been on fire. Their children are inheriting a world that is on fire. Because this person who just flew in from Madrid has lived in Madrid and has a family, and this person is 45 years old, and they have small children, and parts of Madrid are on fire. Parts of central London are on fire. And these people are coming now to Paris for the second round of discussions about the Paris Climate Accords, and they're going to have a different attitude. You need to have a different attitude because the whole world is on fire. You see? And now we have to do things. And I mean, we have to do things, actual things. Things that are going to be losses. And I don't. And there's two ways to look at this. You could say, all right, we clean up our life. I can tell you what your life looks like after you've cleaned it up. I can tell you what your life looks like after you've done the hard work. Like your fat friend who gives up the alcohol, gives up the tobacco, gives up the drugs. Okay, this is what your life looks like after we've done the hard work to save ourselves from global heating. This is what your life looks like the day after that, when we got clean. All right? You will see no driving of any kind, including electric cars. You'll see no flying. The airline industry must be gutted and completely retired and scrapped. You will see no manufacturing and no transportation of goods, because we just can't. It's all carbon-based. It's all fossil fuel, mostly crude oil. The financial system will implode because all that money was backed up by free energy from crude oil. And as soon as all those things have happened, you personally won't have a job. Because your job had something to do. You were your life, your entire life was somehow entwined and trained and geared with all of driving and flying and manufacturing and moving goods in the financial system and having jobs and moving money and consumerism and all the things, okay? That's your life. That's 100% of your life. That's 100% of my life. And so, on the day when we clean ourselves up, the day after, there will be no driving. There will be no flying. There will be no manufacturing. There will be no movement of goods. There will be no financial system. There will be no jobs. There will be no money. All right? Because you got clean. And that's one way to look at it. I call that a controlled demolition. You're going to demolish this thing. You know you're going to demolish it. And you set out deliberately to do that. And if you were deliberately to do that after Paris 2.0, and everyone went back to their home country, and they came back to their countrymen, and they sat them down, virtually, all right? Like FDR back in the Second World War or the Depression would have fireside chats with people, right? He would sit himself down in a chair in front of a fire, and he would talk to America on the radio. And he would do that, okay? So our national leaders could gather around themselves, the scientists, the spiritual leaders, the people that maintain culture, that speak for the people. We could gather all those people around and sit them all down in a room and say, okay, I just got back from Paris. I just signed the 2.0 protocols. We now have signed up for actual deliberate things. We are going to have to cut back on everything, and everything that uses fossil fuels is basically out the window. If we can find alternatives, then we'll try and apply those alternatives. If there's ways that we can keep, people somehow employed, not necessarily a job, by the way, just work, okay? Then we need to come up with those programs. We need to fund those programs. We need to justify all this to the people of our country, to the British and to the Scots and to the Irish and to the Spanish and to the Germans and to the Italians and to the Portuguese and to the Turks and of course to the Americans, which you can't do because Americans are stupid as fuck. But we're going to try, okay? That becomes the project. That is the project. And now you're not hand-waving, well, I'm going to clean up my life someday, except I'm not going to give up the alcohol and the tobacco, okay? I'm going to clean up my life in other ways that aren't as painful as that. But instead, we need to go back to our people and say, we're going to clean up our life, and it's going to hurt. It's going to be humiliating. And you're going to hate yourself. And you're going to want to point fingers at immigrants, and you're going to, and the trans, and the woke, and the liberals, and you're going to want the communists. You're going to point fingers at somebody who made this happen, who ruined your life. Well, the one who ruined your life is you. You ruined your life, and you ruined your planet, and now the whole fucking planet is on fucking fire, okay? And we did that, you did that, I did that, they did that, we all did this together. Because we had to drive, and we had to fly, and we had to manufacture, and we had to transport our goods, and we had to have a financial system, we had to have debt, and we had to have consumerism, and we had to have a job, we had to have the money. We couldn't not do any of these things, because this is what was keeping us alive the entire time. And now, we're going to suffer. We're going to suffer. But it's going to be planned suffering. And the suffering is going to be distributed. Looking at you, Jeff Bezos, looking at you, Elon Musk, we're going to distribute the suffering, okay? And if that sounds like communism to you, well then learn how to spell communism, okay? It's a long word, lots of syllables. Learn how to spell it, if that's what you want to call it, because that's what I guess it's going to be. We are going to exert a lot of pain on ourselves to get ourselves out of this shitty life. where we're a couple of years away from dying under a bridge alone and confused. We're going to try and save ourselves by every means possible, and that means every means possible. Not comfortable. Possible. And it's a controlled demolition. And at the end of this period of time, your life will be irrevocably altered. And there will be no promised banana. We're done being chimps. We're going to have to be Homo sapiens. And it's right there in the title, the wise one. And are we going to be the wise one? Or are we going to be the fucking slope-headed chimp looking for his next banana? Because that's what you're doing now. And if you want to be Homo sapiens, and you want to do better than just stealing bananas from each other, then we have work to do. And we need to do the work now. We should have done it in 2015. Probably wouldn't have saved us from the situation we're in now, but at least we would have had 11 years running start. We didn't do it, and now the entire fucking world is on fucking fire. Well, la-di-da. Now there's no banana. I mean, shortly there's not going to be any bananas. So what are you going to do? That's one way we could do it. That's the long form. That's the painful long form project of climate action. No driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no manufacturing, no financial system, no money, no jobs, okay? Because all that is dependent on fossil fuels, in particular crude oil. And that has to stop. And that's what we were supposed to be signing on to with the Paris Climate Accords. We would stop. We would clean up our lives. And that's when we said we would do it. And we didn't do it because we're a bunch of pussies. We're a bunch of lying sacks of shit. We lied to ourselves. We lied to our children. We lied to our constituents. We went back to our industries and we said, hey, look, I just signed the Paris Climate Accords. According to this, you're all going to get a banana. Okay, that was the game we played in 2015. And because we lied to ourselves and we lied to everybody else and we were still after the banana, where's my banana? Now the whole entire fucking world is on fire. And we don't even have any steps towards addressing that problem. So the entire world is going to burn. There you go. There's no way out of that. And let me just point out that if you think that your most important job is to maintain driving and flying and manufacturing and moving of goods and financial system and debt and loans and money and jobs and consumerism and economic growth and low inflation and low interest rates and more home buying, if you think that's your project and like your fat friend, you have to have all those things. Okay, well then something else is going to happen. And what happens to your fat friend who's drinking too much, smoking too much, doesn't have anyone in his life to look after him, fights with everybody all the time, is basically stupid, right? And drunk when he's not being stupid, and so on, okay? Doesn't eat well, is overweight, showing signs of kidney failure, showing signs of liver failure. What happens to your friend when he doesn't stop the drinking, stop the smoking, and stop the fighting, and stop the everything else? What happens to your friend when he just decides not to do that? Yeah, my life, I need to clean my life up, but I'm not going to do it like that. I'm not going to stop anything. What happens to your friend when he just refuses to stop? He's going to clean up his life euphemistically as an aspirational goal, and people talk about that all the time. I know lots of people that talked about cleaning up their life and they didn't do anything. And what happens to your fat friend, your fat alcoholic, drug addicted friend, when he doesn't do any of the things? He just talks. He dies under a bridge, alone. And when they drag his fat, stinking, rotting corpse out from under the bridge, they won't even know who he is. They won't know who he belonged to. They don't want to know anything about his past or the things he wanted to do when he was 18 years old, or anything about his first marriage, or anything about his second, or anything about his children. They'll just have a corpse, and he'll just be a John Doe. They'll haul his rotting body out from under the bridge, and they'll put him in a morgue, and they'll say, yeah, liver is shot, kidneys are completely shut down. Look at these, full of cancer. Look at these lungs. God, we have to put these on display. These are like the lungs of a loser, right? We have to study these, and brain is half consumed with alcohol and pickled, right? And he's just a medical specimen, and that's going to be us if we don't do the necessary shit we have to do, and that means stop. Oh, yeah, the things your fat friend wouldn't do, right? Stop. Stop. Oh, and stop that too. And what are those things? Leave fossil fuels in the ground. No more consumption of fossil fuels. That means you can't drive. And you think, well, I can drive an electric car. That has to be manufactured. We're stopping that too. Well, you can't stop manufacturing because I won't have a car. Doesn't matter, because you're not going to have a job. You're going to have nowhere to go. Well, this sounds like communism. No, my fat friend. This is doing it the hard way. Okay? And if we don't do it the hard way, my fat friend, if we don't do this the hard way, we're going to be corpses under a bridge that no one can even identify. And it's one thing when it's just a man who dies under a bridge that no one wants and no one can name and no one knows his history and nobody remembers who he was or how he got here. They just haul him out of the morgue, dissect him, and throw him into a incinerator and burn up his body and put his ashes in a pauper's grave. Okay, that doesn't happen to civilizations. We just vanish, and there's no bridge that someone is going to find us under. We just vanish. Well, we leave a landscape littered with our bones and the ashes of our dreams. That's the equivalent of your fat, alcoholic, drug-addicted friend under a bridge. Civilization completely collapses. And we had all these aspirations. I'm going to clean up my life someday. But we did not dare take the steps to do that. We could. I mean, your friend could as well. Your friend could have stopped drinking. It would be painful, and it would be terrible, and it would be frightening, but your friend could have stopped drinking. Your friend could have gotten off the drugs. The withdrawal, the whole thing. Psychosis, your friend could have stopped smoking. The craving, right? The agitation, the aggression. Your friend could have given up fast food. Oh, now I'm hungry all the time. But he could have done that. But your fat friend was too weak to do all that, so he didn't. But he could have. And if he had, maybe he could have saved his life. And maybe he could have reconciled with his children, don't want to talk to him anymore. And maybe he could have reconciled with his prior spouse. Not to get back together again and live a fairy tale life, but just to reconcile, right? Just to clear the air. It wasn't you, it was me. And I just had to say that. I looked you up to tell you it wasn't you, it was me. And I know that now. And your friend could do that, or your friend could die. Civilizations, we can do the hard work. And we can reconcile ourselves to our past and all the terrible things we did. We could apologize to our children, who are actual children. So that's a real thing. We could go to our children and say, Mommy, Daddy fucked up. We didn't mean to. We thought we were doing the right thing for you. But now we realize we completely destroyed your future. And I want to confess to that. And I want to do it while I'm still alive. And I want to do it while you're alive. And in the off chance that if you die before I do, because of global heating, I will know that I unburdened myself. And if I die before you do, then I want you to know that I'm sorry. See, we could do that work, but we have to do that work. Are we going to do that work? Fuck no. Absolutely not. We are not going to do that work because we're lazy, we're selfish, we're addicted. We can't do any of the hard work. We've signed the Paris Climate Accords in 2015 and we did nothing. And that's the answer. Nothing. And now all we have is we need climate action. We need net neutrality. We need carbon neutrality. We need better energy. We have all these euphemisms. We need all these things, right? But it's still going to leave our life dependent on fossil fuels. Even to change the things, we have to use fossil fuels because it's all manufacturing. We have a few years to figure this out. It may be that we end up using the next 5 years or so just apologizing to ourselves, apologizing to our children, apologizing to our communities. It could be we have to use the next few years to prepare for the end. I don't know. Now, I happen to be a fighter. I mean, look at what I'm doing on here, right? I'm a fighter. I'm willing to try. I'm ready to go. And I know exactly what to do. We have to leave fossil fuels in the ground. Like tomorrow. Like, it would have been better 40 years ago, okay? 40 years ago, that actually probably would have made a difference. But even if it doesn't make a difference now, we have to do it. Oh, the world will still be on fire. Oh, yes, that's not going away. Ever. Like, for thousands of years, that's not going away. But we still have to do this. Like your friend who already has, bad kidneys and bad liver and probably is full of cancer and his brain is pickled. He still has to do the hard work because that's what you have to do. And we have to do the hard work. Are we going to do the hard work? No. We should. We know what has to be done. And it's going to be really painful. And if we don't do it, there is no outcome that is better than the outcome if we did do it. Except if we did do it, we have agency. And we can make it a project. We can decide we're not going to drive. We're not going to fly. We're going to get rid of these industries. We're not going to manufacture our way out of this. We're going to try and do the best we can with alternative energy, and that's all, which is only 20%. Electricity is only 20% of our current energy mix. So if that's all you're going to leave yourself, then 80% of your energy mix just evaporates overnight because you're going to leave it in the ground. Now, what can you do after that? I don't know. Whatever you can do. It might be nothing. But whatever. That's the project. You're going to leave it in the ground. And whatever you can do after you've left fossil fuels in the ground, and you covered over, you filled in the wells, you told the Saudis, sorry, you can't make any more money off of us. You go back to camel herding or whatever. And after we've left the coal mines and left capped off the gas wells and capped off the crude oil, and we did all that, and then whatever we can do is what we're left to do. And maybe it's not much. But keep in mind, well, maybe you don't know this. Maybe nobody knows this. Maybe I'm the only person who knows this. So I will say, understand, not keep in mind, understand. We got here without fossil fuels. Now, there's some evidence that the Romans knew about coal, but of course we cut down all the world's forests to make charcoal and wood, ships and all that kind of stuff. So we were damaging the planet for at least 1,000 years, 2,000 years. But we got here without crude oil, natural gas, and coal in large quantities. We've done amazing things. We had sailing ships. We had trade routes. We had fine crafts. We had wine and olive oil and all kinds of spices and everything else. We could get all over the planet with wooden ships and sailing ships. We didn't need coal. We didn't need oil. We didn't need any fossil fuels at all. And the world was the way it was, and the world was habitable and hospitable. And then we screwed up our life. We screwed up our life. We screwed up the life on Earth. We screwed everything up. And it was a mistake. And when did we start screwing things up and why? Well, we were greedy, of course, and we wanted all the energy. We wanted all the political power. We wanted all the goods. We wanted all the manufacturing. We wanted all the exploitation. We wanted the slaves. We wanted the diamonds and the rubies. We wanted the gold. We wanted the everything. We wanted the banana. And now we've got so many bananas, we're about to kill ourselves. And we have to stop. And we're not, and this is where I say we're not going back. We're not going back to, pre-industrialized Greece or Rome. We're not going back. And we don't have to go back. We have to do without. And I know that's painful and that's like horrifying. We must simply do without. And then what we can do without those things, without the driving and the flying and the heavy manufacturing and the heavy transportation of goods around the planet in iron ships, right? And without the financial system and without debt, well, probably like the sound of that, right? But also without jobs and probably without money. There may be some coin, but people didn't have coins. There was people with skills, and they could make something with their hands, and they could make something out of wood or out of leather. There were people that made shoes and hats and clothing, and we bartered and we exchanged, and we put a bunch of stuff on the back of a horse, and we took it to the next town and came back, and came back with coins, right? So that was a thing, and that's the level at which we can do without fossil fuels. What we're going to be doing without fossil fuels, with the knowledge of penicillin and the internet and all the technology and all the things we've discovered, we're not going to lose track of Einstein's theories of relativity. We're not going to lose Newton's laws of motion. We're not going to lose quantum mechanics. We can still do these calculations. We can still talk about these things. We can still study the stars. We are going forward. Our task now is not to have the best banana, the banana that doesn't destroy the world. Our task now is to become different, to be better than chimps. Better than chimps. To want things better than just the next banana. That's our task. And if we do that, then we go forward. And it won't be to an utopia where everyone has brain implants and you play video games all day. It probably won't be like that. It'll be a different type of life, probably more rewarding and more physically demanding, and therefore more purpose. And then we'll understand what these family names mean again. Carpenter, Smith, shoemaker, cooper, rights of different kinds, and all of a sudden those will be our names. Miller, Fuller, those will be our Weaver. Those will be our names because that's what we do. And we'll be proud as Weavers. We'll be proud as Coopers. We'll be proud as Millers. And that will be a good life. And there's no banana. There's simply purpose. There's community. There's being together. There's working together. There's making a world together without fossil fuels. I think it's a worthy task. And right now, with the world being on fire, and with the Paris Climate Accords being a distant memory, and the failures to straighten ourselves out and clean up our lives being ever present in our minds at this point, I think the prospect of doing something different must be compelling. Surely it is compelling. And I guess we'll see. Maybe it won't happen. Frankly, I doubt that it will. It could, but I don't think it will. I don't think people can see past the banana. Yeah, my driving, my flying, my life, my consumerism, the brands I purchase, the way I live my life, the things I like, the things I drink, the things I smoke, the drugs I take, the ways I distract myself, the pub and the football team and all the things that I have to have that make my life meaningful to me. Woohoo, my life has meaning. Okay, we can't give that up. I don't think we can give that up. And I think we're going to get the other default, which is that the world just burns. The world burns, and pretty soon, even the Middle East is burning. It currently is. So, preview of coming attractions, folks. That's a thing, okay? Pretty soon, the Middle East is also on fire, and all the refugee problems and all the oligarchs and all the tech bros, and they've all disappeared and taken their winnings with them and cashed out their stocks and cashed out their bonds and, escaped into wherever their little hidey hole is, and you'll never see them again, and they're going to be fine, and they're going to be the survivors, and the rest of us are just, what, going to burn? Yeah, pretty much. Mordor. Mostly we just burn. And those of us that don't burn, just to keep the analogy going, become orcs. Mordor. And that's the other way you can go. I don't recommend it, but yeah, that's out there. That's actually probably the default. If you do nothing, if you take no action, and I don't mean climate action, if you don't take any concrete actions, leaving crude oil in the ground, capping off the wells, no driving, no flying, communism, okay, whatever you want to call it, we're not doing it anymore, okay? You can't tell me what to do. Well, we're going to take away the fossil fuels. Now what can you do? I'm watching. Okay? What can you do without diesel and petrol and gasoline? And I'm watching. Because that's the task. We have to leave it in the ground. And the world will still burn. Well, we have to leave it in the ground. And without the fossil fuels, many people, most people, nearly all people are going to die. Well, we have to leave it in the ground. And if we don't leave it in the ground, we're all going to die. Like your fat friend under the bridge. Unrecognizable, even to you. We're all going to die. And there'll be nothing that comes after to redistribute our bones and make some sense out of all this. There's no way out at this point. And if you want to be in denial, you might say, well, what do you know? You don't know anything. Okay, well, I understand the role of the laws of physics and all this. And you really should listen to the laws of physics. Because right now, physics wants to set everything you have on fire. Including Bordeaux and the suburbs of Madrid and even part of London, okay? Everything you thought was eternal and sacred is going to burn, including you and your dog. And, okay, let's just face it. Letting everything burn also solves the problem, right? It's a self-limiting problem. We could grab this by the horns and wrestle with it and get one type of solution, or we could just ignore it and die under a bridge. And that also solves the problem. Your buddy who had a problem with alcohol and tobacco and brawling and bad liver and bad kidneys, he doesn't have those problems anymore. Because dead people don't have problems. And if we're having a problem right now with climate change and global heating, well, once our civilization has been completely imploded and burned, and then the rubble, and then the ashes burned again, right? The ashes trampled. After all that's happened, we don't have a problem anymore. We don't have a problem with fossil fuels. We don't have a problem with the GDP. We don't have a problem with jobs. We don't have a problem getting the banana. This is all gone. And that's a solution. Not the solution I want, but that is a solution. And that's what you're going to get. You're going to get that solution if you don't do something else. And right now the world is on fire. And that's the only clue you're going to get. That's the only message you're going to get from physics, that you got a little bit of time left to straighten your shit out. Otherwise, you're going to be dead under a bridge. Like your friend who didn't take the clues and just kept doing the thing and died under a bridge, completely anonymous. Is that scary? Probably is. Probably should be. I hope it is. I hope it is. I wrote a book about all this. Yeah, it's worse than you thought. I gave so much thought to this, I wrote a book. It was 100 Days. It's about the default, where no one does anything, everyone keeps pursuing the banana, and then it all burns. And in 100 days, this group of people has to... No. We then have to, in 100 days or less, complete reorient ourselves around a life without fossil fuels. And a life with less technology. And a life with whatever technology we can salvage. Literally, whatever you can find in the landscape. Okay? And some people figure it out, some people don't, some people fight it, some people adopt it, some people actually consider it to be a renewal of life purpose. That now that they just can't drive and fly and do all the things and have lots of bananas, now they have to struggle, and the struggle itself becomes life. And life with struggle can have meaning that transcends life with leisure. And you think that life with leisure is what you want. Probably what you want is purpose. And one way to get purpose is through struggle. And the book, It Was 100 Days, is really about the struggle for purpose and meaning. It does describe what happens. It describes the horror of what these people go through. The book describes the terrible changes they have to make in their life. And it does not flinch away from what happens when people fail to do that. People die in large numbers, but not everyone. And that's the key to the story. Buy the book. The link is available in the description. It's at Amazon, price to move. The point is not to make money. The point is to give you something to think about besides what you're thinking about right now, if you're paying any attention to the news, that the entire fucking world is on fucking fire. There's more to life than just watching the world burn down around you. Although you're going to do that too. There is more to it than that. What else can I say? I don't know. It's mostly a waste of time. We're in trouble now. Oh, baby. Are we in trouble? We are in trouble now. And probably you're at a point where you can almost agree with that. Like, yeah, something's going on. I wouldn't have thought so 4 years ago. I didn't think so in 2015 when they signed those stupid Paris Climate Accords, whatever the fuck that was about. A bunch of woke pussies pretending they know what they're doing. Ha 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 ha. And now you're thinking, oh, well, well, there is something going on. Yeah, there's definitely something going on. And we don't have a lot of time right now to figure this out. How much time do we have? I don't know, a couple of years. Well, my video, again, I only know this because I just looked it up, July 13th, where in that video I said, yeah, we've got maybe 5 years, about 5 years, and nothing about what's happening right now, it changes my mind, except I might say 3 to 5 before this whole thing implodes around our heads. And then you're back to my book. It was 100 days. And I don't have to say that the world imploded over 100 days. The world actually implodes in the book in like a couple of days, a week. And then you've got about 100 days to completely turn the corner. Your water, your food, your prospects for food, seeds, shovels, shelter, building community, coming up with new ways of self-governance, getting rid of the bad elements, surviving the zombie apocalypse. Oh yeah, there's actually, there are scientific zombies in my book. Actual zombies doing zombie shit in a collapsed world, and it's not it's not anything you think. Okay, I actually had a lot of fun writing the zombies into the book. But there's also looters, and there's remnants of government, and there's nuclear, attacks, and there's all the things you would expect. And I thought it through as best as I could, and I wrote what I think is a realistic proposal for your prospects, given the default outcome of all this. And my book is rapidly becoming a documentary, because some of the things that I had going on in the beginning of the book, that day zero, basically, not day one, but day zero, everything that came before, are now happening. And if you think I'm taking any comfort from that, I'm not. Okay, this is the worst case scenario for me. I wrote a really scary book about the end of the world and what happens after that, and how the people survive or how they don't, and what they become, including zombies. Okay, and it's not pretty, although they get through it. And I tell people, basically, the book is optimistic. Even the zombies can be redeemed. We can do this. We don't have much time. We don't. We have a lot less time than you think you do. The top can come off of this. The lid can come off of this thing real fast. And then after the lid comes off, you have very little time to figure out your life after that. Okay, this happens very quickly. I've got some comments over here. What do we got? I'm not going to respond to everything in here. After Gamer says, is there a chance Big Oil is hiding clean energy from recovered Roswell, New Mexico crash UFO? No, there's no chance of that. Big Oil actually isn't hiding clean energy at all. And we don't need alien technology for that. Clean energy, again, this is a euphemism. It's not clean. There's nothing clean about making solar panels. There's nothing clean about making, manufacturing, transporting, and eventually disposing of wind generators, okay? These are not clean. These are manufactured things, and the closest you can come to a clean energy source is a kind of clean energy we had back in the Middle Ages, and as recently as maybe the 1700s. Water wheels, windmills, like the Dutch had, which they used to pump water out of their lowlands. Windmills, water wheels. The miller, the guy who ground the wheat into flour, the miller, so-called. I mean, his name might have even been Miller, Sam Miller, and he was the miller, and that's a family name, okay? He had a water wheel and a pair of stones. And he put the wheat in, and the water wheel, he had a clutch. He could engage the stones, and the stones would go around. He'd pour the wheat in, and the flour would come out on the side, and that was the level of technology. And the water wheel was made out of wood by a carpenter, another family name, and the technology to get the water up high and go over the wheel and then continue down the stream, all that is well understood since basically Mesopotamia, water management using gravity, and that was clean energy. So you can still have water wheels and you can have windmills that actually pump water or grind grain. You can have clean technology like that. But these things are manufactured by hand, by humans, by carpenters, using wood. And wooden pegs. They don't even need nails and iron, just wooden pegs throwing this thing together. You can have clean energy like that. But you can't have solar panels and wind farms because that's manufacturing. And it all requires fossil fuels. And even alien technology from Roswell would require manufacturing. You can't have that. If the aliens came down here and they gave us the perfect thing, here's some clean energy, and then they flew away and disappeared, we'd have to figure it out and then manufacture it. But you can't do that anymore because you can't manufacture except with fossil fuels. And we can't do that. Now you can make a water wheel out of wood, and you can make millstones out of slabs of granite, which a mason can carve for you, and you can grow your own wheat, and you can put the wheat in the top of the top stone, and the flour comes out on the side, and the water drives the wheel, and then the wheel drives the stones, and you can have all that. And you can get the granite from your environment, and the wood from your environment, and the water from your environment, and the wheat from your environment, and you can have all that. Because it's not manufactured. It's assembled from materials in your environment. After Gamer says 2 to 3 years tops. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm allowing for 5 because I don't know why I allowed for 5. Just feeling generous that day. But, oh, man, this could go sideways so fast. Now look what's happening in the Middle East, the Persian Gulf. This could, oh my God, people. Oh, we're in trouble. Oh, this could go sideways so hard. So hard. And it's in my book. Buy the book, please, please. For my own sanity, buy the book, read the book, share the book, hand the book around, talk about the book to your people, okay? I'm trying to point the way, trying to help you understand what's going to happen to you. And, 2 to 3 years, yeah, maybe. We can't do it. I don't think we can do it. When I wrote my book, it was 100 days. We didn't do it. And I still maintain we're not going to do it. They're going to drill for the oil. They're going to drill for the natural gas. They're going to fight for oil. And, Donald Trump will take over all the oil in the world. He'll get the oil from the Venezuelans. He'll steal the oil from the Iranians. He'll work a deal with the Saudis and get their oil. He'll probably steal oil from the Russians. And then he'll have all the oil. And then he'll be a dead guy. And what was that all about? It was just about him getting all the oil. He likes having all the oil. He wants to be the guy who says, kiss the ring. If you kiss the ring, I'll give you some oil. That's what he wants. So we're never going to get off the oil. Because there's no one around who says, kiss the ring and I'll give you solar panels. Or, kiss the royal toe and I'll give you a water-powered windmill. A water wheel. We're going in the wrong direction here. Chickpea. Hi, Chickpea. Love you, darling. Fossil fuels, not mention of the methane produced by agriculture, livestock, digestion, manure management make up roughly 30% of total emissions and the water used. Okay, that's fine. Those are numbers, that's all true. But let me point something out to you, Chickpea. And I know I've done this before, we've had this conversation before, and it's fine, we'll have it again, I'm sure. Let me point something out to you. You can't have animal husbandry on the scale we have it now without fossil fuels. Any action we're going to take from here forward could have been different 40 years ago, but from here forward, with the fucking world on fucking fire, okay, well, where we are right now, everything has to start with no fossil fuels. Leave it in the ground. Full stop. Take the hit. Go into withdrawal. End of civilization. Whatever. Take the hit. No fossil fuels. And I promise you that on the day we don't have the fossil fuels, then we don't have these cattle industries. We don't have these pig farms. We don't have these chicken industries. We don't have any way to transport these things. Because remember, the cattle are transported to a slaughterhouse, which is like a factory. It covers 14 acres. And then from there, it's all frozen in big refrigerators running with fossil fuels, electricity, and all that. Then it's going into big trucks with big frozen trailers on the back. And then all these trucks distribute all these carcasses all over the planet. Well, if you don't have the trucks, and you don't have the factories, and you don't have the feed, and you don't have the huge cattle lots, then the only way you have a cow is if you have a cow in your backyard. You have a cow. And maybe you're just using that cow for milk, but you have one solitary single cow. And that's how we used to do things. And if someone had a herd of cattle, it was 8, a dozen on a pasture. And they weren't bringing in cattle feed and huge tractor trailers and dumping it all, and all these cattle shoulder to shoulder waddling around shitting on each other trying to get to the feed, right? No, 12 on a pasture. Because without fossil fuels, that's all you can do. That's the size of that industry. So all your concerns, which are well received on this end, about the methane and the cow farts and the cow shits and the slaughterhouses and all this churn, all of this is about the banana, right? It's all the chimps getting the banana, except the banana is made out of beef, right? So it's all about getting all of our pleasures. It just ends, chickpea. It just fucking ends without fossil fuels. So that's why I go on and on and on about fossil fuels. Fossil. Now, me going on about fossil fuels is a threat to people in another way. Not because it doesn't solve their problem with animal husbandry. The reason people don't want to hear about me going on about fossil fuels, it just stops everything else too. Because if you understood that, well, if we end fossil fuels, you can't have these huge industries, then you would say, okay, well, then we should just end fossil fuels. But you don't want to end fossil fuels because fossil fuels is what keeps you alive every single day. Everything you do, including everything you eat, including everything you feed your cats, including everything you do, all your medications, all your doctor appointments, the bus outside, the train that runs under the ground, and all the lighting and all the cooling and all the everything, the building materials, clothing, shoes, all of it, communications, internet. This stream right here is made possible with 100% application, 100% of the time, day and night, 24/7, without any interruption of fossil fuels. And if we get rid of the fossil fuels, we also get rid of all the problems with animals, including the impact they're having on the environment. And that's a good thing. But we also get rid of the rest of civilization. And that's when people push back. And that's why I get pushback. We can't do this. We have to do this. And then a lot of problems will be solved. And then a lot of problems will be created. And just, I've said this before, and this is a perfect time to say it again. This is qualified as a wicked problem. Wicked problem is actually in the dictionary. You can look it up. Wicked problem is a problem that admits of no solutions. And you say, well, no, that can't be true. All problems have solutions. Well, you'd think that, but you'd be wrong. There are sets of problems that have no solution. Or to be more nuanced, you can come up with solutions, but the solutions are just as bad as the original problem, or worse. Wicked problems present what we call an approach avoidance problem. You approach the problem because it's a problem. I want to solve this. And then when you see the solutions, you back away. That's the avoidance. And then you approach, and then you avoid, and then you approach, and then you avoid. And this is and what you're approaching is the horror of the problem. What you're avoiding is the horror of the solution. And that's a wicked problem. Back and forth. We have a problem here. Let's approach it. Oh, it's a horrible problem. Oh my God, we have to do something. Well, do these things. Oh, those are horrible things to do. And then you back away. So this is a wicked problem. We approach it and then we go away. We approach it and then we go away. And that's how we've handled this basically for the 100 years that we've known this was a problem. Approach avoidance. These things are powered just by their momentum and gravity. For example, water, river coming down a mountain. This is where some grounding in physics is useful. And this is 8th grade physics, okay? There are different types of energy. Energy can be neither created nor destroyed. One of the easiest forms of energy to harness is actually what's called potential energy. And water coming down a mountain has a lot of potential energy. Water weighs 7 pounds per gallon. And if you can catch that water at a high point and then let it descend under gravity at 7 pounds per gallon, you can harness that. And that's what a water wheel does. A water wheel catches the water up, and these water wheels are huge. They can be 20 feet across. They catch the water up at the top. Then the weight of the water in the buckets drags the wheel around, and then the water just falls out the bottom. That's potential energy. That 20 feet of fall and that weight so associated with that 20 feet of fall is energy. We can use that, but it's potential energy. And the water has to be moving. And it has to come in at a high spot and go out at a low spot. And you're harvesting the potential energy. We can do that. And that's kind of perpetual. So long as it rains somewhere, then we get that energy. And then I say, well, that doesn't make any sense. If energy is neither created nor destroyed, then where'd the energy come from? The energy came from the sun. So harnessing water energy is a form of solar energy. Now let me explain. Somewhere in the world, there's a body of water, a lake, a river, an ocean, probably an ocean. It gets hot. From that body of water, evaporation. The phase change from a liquid state to a vapor state consumes energy. Again, this is sort of 8th grade physics, but we all had 8th grade. Some of us had 8th grade physics. We all probably mostly forgot it. So I'm just going to give you the outline. When water evaporates, it's a phase change from the liquid to the vapor. That consumes energy. The vapor then has that energy. The energy came from where? The sun. The sun heated the water. The water evaporated under the heat. The vapor form now contains that water. This is called the latent energy of water. And so then this water vapor floats around. Somewhere it condenses and it becomes liquid again. When it becomes liquid, it releases that heat, which is what drives hurricanes. Okay, the heat disappears into the atmosphere. But now, watch what happened. This is interesting. It was at the level of the sea level, literally defined. It was at the level of the sea, and now it's up here floating around at 10, 15, 20,000 feet as a cloud. And so when it condenses and releases that energy, it's way up here. And it weighs 7 pounds per gallon. And now it's at 15,000 feet. Well, now that's a nice trick. You just lifted water 15,000 feet into the air with nothing but sunlight and a little bit of wind to move it around. And now you've got a cloud. Now it rains on your mountaintop. Now the water comes down the mountainside, and it's not at 15,000 feet anymore, but it's liquid water. And it's coming down the mountainside, headed back to the sea, where it'll be back to neutral. And it has all this potential energy coming down the hillside. And if you think it doesn't have energy, just look at all the rocks it's bringing with it. Look at all the flash floods. Look at how flash floods can destroy entire buildings. That's potential energy, baby. And so you can harness that. We figured that part out a long time ago. We figured out that if it can move rocks, it can move a wheel. And if it can move a wheel, then it can move a grinding stone and a pump and a something else. And I can use it to lift, and I can use it to move, and I can use it to grind wheat berries. And energy. And it's the potential energy of falling water is what it is. Until that water gets to the sea, and then it has none. Until it evaporates again, and then it requires energy from the sun, and now it's at 15,000 feet, and now it rains, and now it's back on the mountaintop, and it's going right back down again. And it's not the same water that you harvested yesterday for its energy. It's different water, but it doesn't matter. It came from somewhere, and now you're stealing energy from it. That's green. That's green energy. And you made a water wheel out of wood locally, and you made it with your hand and wooden pegs. You hammered them together, and then you just it's there as long as it rains. And this energy from the sun, it's energy from the sun. Because that's what drove the whole thing in the first place. It's solar energy. And you don't need solar panels, and you don't need a wind farm. It's just solar energy from evaporating water, letting it fall, and then harvesting the kinetic energy that comes out of it as an expression of its potential energy due to gravity. Now that's a big speech, and that's a bunch of hoo-ha, and that's a bunch of magic, but that's how the world works. That's how the universe actually functions. And it's far more interesting to me to know how the universe actually functions rather than to imagine that aliens at Roswell left some stupid invention that some stupid scientist farted on and didn't do anything with, and the governments came in and decided we can't have this shit, and all this crazy hyperbole about how fucked up the world is. And what's happening is you don't know how the world works. There's magic in the world, and water turning a wheel is it. You don't need Roswell. You need a water wheel. That's what you need. You need that. Will you have that after the collapse of civilization? No, you won't. You won't even know that you need that because eighth grade physics didn't really stick. If it did, you'd be less concerned about Roswell and a lot more concerned about how to make a water wheel. How to harvest the free energy in water flowing to the sea. Because that's what it is. Solar energy. It's free to you. That's the level of the undertaking. That is the work of the moment. We're not doing the work. You're not doing it. Nobody's doing it. They want to have conspiracies about Roswell and all this other bullshit, and it's just chimps chasing bananas, as far as I'm concerned. And you people have no future. Because you don't understand that there's free energy in falling water. Now, I just told you that, and you won't believe it because you don't understand it, because you don't remember 8th grade physics. Hey, go down to the used bookstore, find a textbook from 8th grade, and read about 8th grade physics. The book probably cost you $1. And what I just told you about energy transformations being driven by the sun, that part, that's probably 3 paragraphs. 3 paragraphs in an 8th grade physics book. Yeah, I'm afraid. I don't think this is going to work out, okay? I'm actually really worried. I don't think you people are going to figure this out. I keep trying. I keep coming on here. I don't know if you're going to figure it out. I don't see any evidence for this. I get conspiracies. Roswell. Tesla. The original Tesla. Nikola Tesla. Do you know why humans abandoned all that technology? Oh, absolutely. You know too. You know why we abandoned water wheels and windmills? The old Dutch-style windmills, you know why we abandoned that. Because it wasn't enough energy. And it wasn't portable, by the way. To have a mill, let me explain to you how this works. To have a mill, to mill wheat into flour, which is like really critical for most human nutritional needs. To have a mill to mill flour, you have to have grindstones, which are easy to attain. By the way, I'll just tell you this. When push comes to shove, and when you need 2 granite grindstones, one stationary and then one turning, okay, they can be driven by a wheel, like a water wheel. When the time comes and you want 2 granite stones, the cemeteries are full of them. Remember that. The cemeteries are full of granite. Moving on. But to have that water wheel, you needed falling water. And, there are streams and things that are suitable for this all over the place, but only in certain places. And, of course, you have to have rain. So there's a certain climate. And so you can't just have millstones anywhere. You have to have them near water. So later on, they figured out that by using steam and later on internal combustion, steam is external combustion, the internal combustion engines like what we have in your car. That's different. But by having steam, external combustion, and then internal combustion, you could locate your mill anywhere. Oh, and you could have lots of them. Your community might not even have a river nearby, and yet you could have 20 mills, all of them driven by steam or something else, some other type of energy transformation. And so rather than having one mill over there by the creek, which wasn't too bad because people and animal also needed water. So you generally had your communities by water. So the fact that the mill was near the water probably didn't make a big deal because the humans were near the water too, for obvious reasons. But later, when we started moving water in pipes and plumbing and aqueducts and the Romans and all this kind of stuff, okay, then the mill, it was inconvenient for it to be stuck next to the water. We wanted the mill in town, and then we needed engines. And so we stopped having a mill out by the water because that's too far away from town. And now, plus, probably the stream has been channelized or even dried up, or the stream has been captured for agricultural purposes, and now there is no water. So rather than just hoping for rain and hoping for the water to be there, they started using engines. And we abandoned water wheels because we had engines. But engines require heavy manufacturing, which requires coal, oil, and natural gas. So in the future, when this whole thing comes crashing down, you won't have manufacturing like that. You won't be able to order a 6-cylinder diesel engine from the Chinese and have it delivered in a crate. That's not going to happen. But maybe you could find a stream, and maybe you can harness some of that water to drive a water wheel. And if you've got enough people with the right tools and you have some trees around, you can make a water wheel out of wood and just pegs. You don't even need bolts and nuts and everything else. In fact, those will rust and they won't serve you for very long. But you can use wooden pegs and you can make a water wheel out of wooden pegs. And then you can have motive power. And then you can have grindstones. And then you can turn them. And then you have to be near water to do that, but you can do that. And someone can do that, either with you or for you or despite you, and you can have a water wheel. But we've gotten away from that because it wasn't convenient. It didn't lead to economic growth. There was one mill, and it was owned by that guy. And if he wanted to charge you a lot of money for your milling purposes, he could. And if there was only the one and he couldn't service everybody, then that was a problem. And so we didn't like it because it didn't lead to growth. And now we do things differently. I have a wheat mill right here in my house. Of course, it's electric, has an electric motor. It has grindstones, and it turns them with an electric motor. And it's just almost like old school. And I pour the wheat berries in through the top, and I have a bowl, and the flour comes out the side into the bowl, and I collect the flour in the bowl, but it doesn't have a water wheel. And I didn't assemble the water wheel with wood and pegs, right? And there's no stream outside my house. I have electricity. And it turns the motor. And that's the way we do things now. And that works as long as there's electricity, which means as long as there's a civilization. Because electricity doesn't come from just anywhere. That's a big project. That's a big hack. That's a big hack, okay? But I have one. It's right here, sitting right next to me. Somewhere. There it is. I see it right here. Okay? Oh, and I got wheat berries. I buy them from Amazon. 25 pounds at a time. And I have them on the shelf down in my basement, and I bring them up here, and I make my own flour. It's really great flour, by the way. Make my own flour, make my own bread. I have a bread machine, okay? Make my own flour, make my own bread. Eat the bread. I can feed myself. Except I get the wheat berries from Amazon, and that kind of sort of sucks. But those wheat berries can also, they're seeds. So push comes to shove. The civilization collapses. It's been 100 days. I find some piece of land, and I cast a little bit of the seed on the ground, and I get wheat. Well, then what do? Well, I have to harvest the wheat when it's ready. Do I know when it's ready? I'd probably look that up somewhere on Wikipedia, right? Unless civilization has collapsed, I wouldn't know how to do that. But maybe I have a book. Maybe I actually deliberately bought a book about how a medieval life, right? And so they have all the things I need to know about how to do things with just water power and maybe wind power and, of course, human power and animal power. So now I can raise wheat, and I can harvest the wheat, and I can thresh the wheat. Why do you thresh the wheat? Because you knock the wheat berries out of the kernel heads, right? So I thresh the wheat, I gather the wheat, I store it in a silo, and keep the rats and mice off of it. And then I have a mill right here, runs on electricity, and now I have end-to-end. Bread needs yeast. But you can make sourdough bread, which is natural yeast. So I have an end-to-end solution for bread if I have a piece of land that I can grow wheat on, because I got the wheat berries. I can plant those. They do sprout, by the way. People eat the sprouts. This is knowledge. Now, clearly I have this knowledge. Clearly I've thought about this. I've looked it up. I've watched the documentaries on YouTube. I've studied it. I didn't watch it like, oh, that's cute. I like, how'd they do that? Wait, back up and watch that again. Oh, yeah, look at that. Look what he's doing. Look at the kind of tool he's using. Yeah, I don't have that tool. I have something different, but look what he's doing with that tool. And he's carving that wood and he's making that shape. See, that's how I watch documentaries. I'm not sitting there eating nachos and drinking a beer and elbowing my buddy. Hey, look at that woman. Did she look good? Yeah, okay. No, look at that tool. Stop looking at the females. Look at this tool. Look what he's doing with that tool. I know what that tool is. That's called a spoke shave, and that guy is making spokes for a wooden wheel. Now, hold on. Fast forward. Do they make the wooden wheel? How'd they do this? Hold on. Let's watch this part. Go back and watch this again. Okay, when I watch a documentary, I watch it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And that's why I know what I know. And it's not nearly enough. And people have written books on this, by the way. I'm not the only one watching documentaries back and forth, shuttling back and forth. Other people have done that, and now they've written their own books on how to survive with just water power and how to survive the collapse of civilization. It's not even prepper shit. It's civilizational shit. How to make a water wheel, how to make grindstones out of cemetery headstones, and how to manage animals, and how to make a fence, and how to make a gate for the fence, and how to feed your animals, and how to have a pasture, and how to manage animals and animal diseases. And this is the prepper shit. This isn't like my gun, my making my own bullets, my pit bull. It's not prepper shit. This is like how do you do things shit. How do you do anything? How did anybody ever do anything before all this? Good to know. I suspect. Over the next 3 to 5 years. So you're asking a lot of questions. I really like that. Gonna get to all of them. Steam. Steam is an interesting transition. Steam is external combustion, okay? The amount of technology required for external combustion engines is much more primitive than internal combustion engines. And that's why they came first. We don't use them too much anymore because, again, they're not really portable, and there's a lot of water, and there's fire, and fireboxes, and fuel. You have to shovel it in with a shovel. But steam, because it's a more primitive type of combustion technology, it is easier to do. And, people were making steam engines in, the mid-1800s, right? Using just very primitive workshop technology. And just men who just knew how to use a lathe, knew how to work with metal alloys, and lubrication technology, and they could make these really primitive machines that were not efficient. They used enormous amounts of energy, and they wasted most of it. And then they were running on water, and then they had to have more water, and it was very wasteful of materials. But it was accessible. They could do steam because you could do steam at a very primitive level of technology, and so they did. And from steam, of course, we got everything else. But we could go back to steam. We could do that because it's primitive enough with low enough tolerances that the machine work you'd have to do to have steam is accessible. You'd have to figure out how to do it. But you could do it without a huge industry, without all this. Okay, without all this, you could do your own steam engines. Now they're complicated internally. All the gearing and all the valves and all the everything else. You watch a steam engine operate, and you're like, wow, that's a lot of moving parts. Okay, but they did them. They really did. And also, some of the early internal combustion engines were like two-stroke engines. There's a term for these type of engines. Well, they're industrial, they're stationary, they're on skids, and they're really heavy. Okay, but hit or miss. That's what they're called. Hit or miss. Hit or miss engines. They are amazingly polluting. But because the technology of a hit or miss engine is really simple, and almost on the level of a steam engine. It's almost like the same level of technology can give you a steam engine, and then you can turn around and make a hit or miss internal combustion engine that runs on diesel or gasoline or really anything that burns. You can run it on olive oil. And so these hit or miss engines was the next level right after steam. And then we made them much better after that. But you can make a steam engine with fairly primitive technology. I mean, men did it. And they didn't have China manufacturing shit for them. They were making it themselves in a shop with hammers. Okay? You can make a steam engine with a hammer, essentially. It's blacksmithing, right? Blacksmithing, that's a really important thing. Blacksmithing can make you a steam engine, but blacksmithing can also make you something like a hit or miss engine that runs like a diesel. So these are things that we could go back to, but we're having to go forward. Can we rediscover these things in our own future? Maybe. Somebody could. I just explained it. So I guess I could. But, will I be alive? No, probably not. Will anyone listen to anything I have to say? No, probably not. But somebody will be around who understands how to make a steam engine, how a steam engine operates, how to make a hit or miss engine, and then we can have engines. And then maybe we don't have to have our mills by a water. But having your mill by the water is still a good thing to have. Leave it in the ground and make pollution death penalty, including ecocide. I don't care. You have to leave it in the ground. You don't have to punish anybody. There will be enough punishment to go around. If we just leave fossil fuels in the ground, it's going to be a death march. I don't know how else to say it. It's going to be absolutely, completely, undeniably, continuously horrific. But we have to do it anyway. Because the world is on fire. Because of global heating. So we have to do this, people. And if we don't do it, then we die under a bridge. Okay, that's the other thing we can do. Or we could do something different. And take the bull by the horns and do what we have to do. Do the necessary. And will people suffer? Will people be punished? Will people not understand? Yes, 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 and yes. Maybe so what? The Industrial Revolution might have been a suicide bomb inside job. Well, it wasn't an inside job because there was no intention. Wife is talking on the phone. It wasn't an inside job and it wasn't suicide. It was progress. It was progress, and we have to keep it going because we want more progress. And that's how it's defined. That's how we observe it. That's how it's been. It's got us a long ways. It got us to the moon. So it wasn't a suicide job. It was progress. Could you not? Could you be somewhere else?
No, because the doctor's ready to talk to you. 1 o'clock. Remember I gave you that?
Oh. Well, I have a doctor's call?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm supposed to be on the phone talking to a doctor. Who knew? Well, I knew, and I've just taken too much time for this. Thanks for the questions, folks. Stay engaged. Stay engaged, and, I come back here once in a while. We can do these topics again, and I do need to jump off. It's been fun. It isn't fun. Okay, it's been important. Let's just let it be that. It's been important. And if you're worried, that's good. If you're looking for something to do, start looking. If you don't know who you could be working with, find people. Spend time at the library. Look for the books. Read up on the Middle Ages. They knew some things. We're not going back to the Middle Ages. We're going forward. But they knew some things, and they got us where we are today. So that wasn't bad. And